My name is Leo. Since we moved into my uncle's old house in Vermont, I've never felt truly alone. I was sitting in the study, trying to focus on my homework while the winter wind howled outside. But there was a different kind of draft inside. Every time I leaned over my desk, I felt a rhythmic, icy brush against the back of my neck. It was soft, yet cold as a grave, like a pendulum swinging slowly behind me. Touch, release, touch, release. I thought it was just the draft from the old windows, but the air stayed still. When I turned around, there was nothing but the dusty shadows of the bookshelves. But the moment I turned back to my books, the cold touch returned, stroking my neck like frozen fingers. I could feel it now. The draft didn't just touch my neck anymore, it was draining my life. Within a week, the Burlington doctors gave up. They called it a wasting sickness they'd never seen. I knew better. I was being eaten. I was confined to an old iron bed in the study, too weak to lift my head. But it didn't stop. Even when I lay on my back, I felt that rhythmic, frozen stroke against the nape of my neck. In my fever dreams, I saw it. A long, dark shadow, like a rope made of frost, swinging from the ceiling right above me. Touch. Release. The cold was inside my bones. My uncle, a broken man, finally made the call to a paranormal team in Boston. I hoped they'd bring a cure. I feared they'd only find my body. The doorbell rang heavy through the blizzard. Eleanor, a renowned medium from Boston with piercing eyes and dressed in solid black, stepped into the house. Unlike the doctors before her, the moment she crossed the threshold, she shivered and gripped her silver necklace. "This house doesn't just have cold air," she whispered to my uncle. "It has the scent of resentment." As Eleanor entered the study where I lay, the air suddenly grew thick. She asked to extinguish all lights, leaving only a single white candle on the desk. In the dimness, Eleanor took a handful of silver powder and blew it into the air above my bed. The silver dust didn't fall to the floor. Instead, it caught on something invisible hovering there, forming the shape of two thin gray feet, swinging right against the nape of my neck. Eleanor recoiled in horror, whispering ancient prayers under her breath. Eleanor's hands shook as she pulled an antique bronze mirror from her bag, its surface stained by time. She held it up, tilting it toward the ceiling directly above my bed. In the murky reflection, a sight appeared that turned my uncle's blood to ice. It wasn't an empty wooden ceiling. There was a girl, her long black hair hanging down like frayed, rotting ropes. She was suspended by an invisible noose. Her neck snapped at an impossible angle, her wide, milky eyes staring straight down at me. Every time the wind whistled through the window, her weightless corpse swung, and those cold, pale feet brushed against my neck with rhythmic precision. She wasn't just haunting the house, she was feeding on me, draining my breath to keep herself from fading into the void. Eleanor lowered the mirror, her breath coming in ragged gasps. She recognized the girl's tattered Victorian gown and the faint tattoo on her wrist, a pendulum, the crest of the Sterling family, the original owners of this house. Her name was Abigail Sterling, a girl locked away in the attic and forgotten by history. "She doesn't want to kill him yet," Eleanor whispered, her voice trembling. "She's using Leo as an anchor to the living world. Every time those feet brush his neck, she steals a fragment of his memory and a spark of his warmth." I lay there, hearing everything but unable to move. Then a foreign thought pierced my mind, an image of a dark cellar and the rattling of keys. Abigail was making a bargain. She would let me go, but only if I found what was stolen from her before she died. Following Eleanor's lead, my uncle grabbed a storm lantern and headed for the stone stairs of the cellar. The air down there was thick with the smell of damp earth and rotting roots. Tucked behind stacks of old crates, they found a small door, sealed shut with rusted iron bars. When the wood was finally pried open, a tiny windowless room was revealed. The place where Abigail had been discarded. On the cold stone floor sat a small oak box covered in decades of dust. Inside were no jewels, only unsent letters and a lock of hair tied with a black ribbon. This was her true anchor. But the moment they touched the box, a dry, raspy gasp echoed from the stairs. Not from my room upstairs, but from right behind them. Abigail's shadow stretched across the stone walls, her swinging feet casting long, distorted streaks like dancing ghosts in the flickering lantern light. The moment my uncle tried to carry the box upstairs, a deafening slam shook the entire house. The cellar door bolted shut, the rusted latches sliding into place as if moved by invisible hands. Upstairs, I screamed in agony. I didn't feel the gentle brush on my neck anymore. It felt like skeletal, frozen fingers were crushing my throat. Down in the cellar, the lantern light flared a sickly, ghostly blue. Abigail was no longer a mere shadow. She manifested in the center of the room, suspended in midair, her long black hair lashing out like venomous snakes. Her face was distorted with rage, her gaping mouth emitting a piercing shriek. She didn't want the letters found so she could rest. She wanted everyone who knew her secret to share her fate, to be forgotten in the dark. The floorboards above began to groan and crack, and long strands of black hair started seeping through the gaps, hanging down like a web of death. Eleanor stood her ground in the shaking study, gripping her silver crucifix, chanting in low, urgent Latin. But Abigail didn't recoil. She tightened her grip. Her hair coiled around the posts of my iron bed, pulling so hard the metal screeched against the floorboards. The silver dust from earlier now clung to the strands, flickering like 1,000 demonic eyes. "Your rage is not justice," Eleanor shouted. She realized then that Abigail wasn't angry about the imprisonment. It was the letters. They held the secret of who truly murdered her, an ancestor of my own family. As Eleanor poured the last of the holy salt in a circle around me, Abigail suddenly dropped lower. Her pale, featureless face stopped just a breath away from mine. Her feet stopped swinging. They rested heavy on my chest, a cold so deep it pierced through my sweater and settled in my heart. Down in the cellar, my uncle forced open the yellowed letters. They weren't love notes. They were desperate pleas for help, written in dried blood. Abigail didn't take her own life. She was murdered, strangled and staged by her own father, my great-grandfather, to protect a dark secret about the family estate. As the words were read aloud, a heavy, suffocating silence fell over the house. Upstairs, Abigail's expression shifted. The black strands of hair stopped strangling me and began to stroke my cheeks, almost tenderly, as if she saw the face of her killer in mine. Eleanor screamed, "Leo, you must acknowledge their sin. Only the truth can cut the noose." With the last of my strength, I managed to whisper, "I'm sorry for what they did to you." Instantly, the invisible rope around her neck ignited into a cold blue flame, and the room was filled with the soul-shattering wails of 100 shadows hidden within the timber walls. When the blue flames died out, Abigail vanished into the air, leaving behind a silence that was even more terrifying. My sickness faded as quickly as it had arrived. Within hours, I could sit up, the color returning to my face. The house in Vermont fell still. No more groaning floorboards, no more icy drafts. Eleanor left without a word, only a final warning whispered to my uncle. Some blood debts are never truly settled. Years later, I moved to the city, but I never wear anything that leaves my neck exposed. Because there, at the nape of my neck where Abigail's feet once swung, are two faint, crescent-shaped bruises. They turn ice cold whenever the winter wind blows. And sometimes, in the dead of night when I'm working late, I still hear a soft, freezing gasp right against my ear. And I feel it. That invisible pendulum beginning its rhythmic stroke once again. Touch. Release. Touch. Release.